All right, let's start this webinar. Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining to our today's webinar titled Quality Assurance and Testing in Automotive Development. My name is Mylan Tran and I will be the host of this webinar today. So let me walk you through this agenda for today. After a short introduction of our company Endlin Software, I'm going to talk about automotive safety regulatories and also about the industry regulation and standards. Afterwards, I'm going to show you how we can provide safety and also the process quality requirements within our application lifecycle tool called codeBeamer, also in a short live demonstration. But before we jump off to our today's presentation and demonstration, let me just quickly tell you about the structure of this webinar. So after a live demonstration where you will get the chance to learn more about codeBeamer's quality assurance functionality, including our risk management, testing, and also how we provide traceability and also other features which can support you to be compliant with the relevant industry standards. And we will also show you how to use codeBeamer to manage your releases and the versions, so we call it baselines, and also how we provide or secure electronic signatures within codeBeamer, and also how you can manage your risks and how we ensure test coverage using our integrated coverage browser, and also we will also show you or explain how the integration with the automated testing tools works. And if you are having any questions at any point of the webinar, please just feel free to use the integrated question area of your GoToMeeting dashboard, and I will do my best to answer them all in the end of this webinar. And if I don't get to your question, I will, of course, follow up with you. And a recording of today's webinar will be available on our website soon after this webinar. And once you are visiting our webpage, please also make sure that you browse around through our upcoming webinars as well. And last week, for example, we talked about how we can support different methodologies and how you can work either with Agile, V-model, waterfall, and hybrid in our codeBeamer application lifecycle solution. So just feel free to check out this recording as well. So moving on, just a few words about us. Endlin Software was founded in the year 1998. We are headquartered in Stuttgart, which is based in Germany, and we also have an office in Silicon Valley in the USA, and also have partners in Korea and Taiwan. We are the developers and also sole vendors of the single solution codeBeamer application lifecycle management, with including 5 modules such as the requirements management, software development management, quality assurance and test management, demand management, and IT operations. So we provide all the 5 modules just in one single repository. Also, on this slide, you can see a short list of our clients. And as you can see here, we have various clients from diverse industries such as the automotive, high-tech, defense, finance, and medical, and from other industries as well. And we have companies in the ranking of mid-size and also large global enterprises. So for example, Daimler, Siemens, and also, for example, Lufthansa Industry Solutions, who is also our rollout and hosting partners for small installation, which starts from 4 to 5 users up to 5,000 users. So let's talk about today's topic, the automotive safety and quality assurance and testing in the automotive development. So the automotive sector is a very highly regulated industry, and with millions of vehicles running on the roads and also in the fast lanes of modern motorways all around the world, many accidents are bound to occur. And tragic accidents resulting from an error which could have been prevented in the design stage, for example, could not only affect the reputation of these manufacturing companies, it could also have direct financial consequences. So product recalls and also lawsuits are not unheard in the automotive industry. So for instance, millions of cars, trucks are being recalled every year, stemming usually just from faulty manufacturing, unsafe build, or even customer complaints, and this results in huge losses. And the lives of humans users may depend on such devices, so their safety and also the reliability is very vital. Safety is a top concern for automotive manufacturers and also developers of embedded software in the road vehicles. And the importance of managing all the risks in especially safety critical industries such as the medical field, the automotive sector, and other transport industries, for example, also the railway, aviation, cannot be emphasized enough. Also, the end products of the automotive development have to undergo automotive testing in order to ensure all the safety and also the reliability. And also, as embedded software is increasingly used in the cars to also manage and monitor the operation of interconnected mechanical or electronic modules, adequate quality assurance and also testing processes is needed. And modern cars now feature significantly more software code than, for example, the Facebook system, equating just to whopping up to 100 million lines of code in just one single modern high-end car. And this is pretty much very or a lot of source code, which also means a very lot of risks to handle and also to manage. So to ensure that all the source code or the automotive system works reliably and doesn't introduce further hazards, quality assurance measures need to be taken, of course. And automotive developers rely on risk management on one hand and testing on the other hand. And risk management measures are taken to identify the potential hazards in advance and also to plan and execute the mitigation of these risks in order, of course, to reduce the general risk level of a device or a system. And while risk management does affect the process of your development, it can be considered a mainly preliminary procedure. So there are international standards such as the IEC 61508 or the ISO 26262, which are fundamental in automotive development. IEC 61508 is a general standard focusing on the functional safety requirements of electrical, electronic, programmable, electronic safety related items or systems. In the ISO 26262, the risk management is a very huge part. And with this integrated approach and also the advanced safety and risk-related feature set, codeBeamer application lifecycle management is a very cost-effective solution to meet the requirements set forth by the IEC 61508, giving companies a competitive advantage. So I'm going to show this later on in the live demonstration. Just to highlight all the compliance with the ISO 26262 and also the IEC 61508, the standard risk-based approach called Automotive Safety Integrated Levels, or also known as ASIL, is to help its customer to determine the risk classes or also safety-related system and can be used for that. And the ASIL provides a method to determine each item's safety requirements. And these ASIL classes helps determine the acceptable residual risk for each subsystem, as well as an acceptable general risk safety level. And ASIL are determined at the first stage of the development process and are made up of three components. So the first component is called the probability. So basically it's the likelihood of the hazardous event. The second component is the controllability, that is how the event is detected and also being controlled. And the last component is the severity of the consequences and how the hazard should occur. So the components are assigned an appropriate ASIL level, for example A, B, C, or D. And with ASIL D is the highest safety integrity level, which will serve as safety goal during the development. And these goals helps you to set the requirements to mitigate or to reduce the risk to an acceptable level. And ISO 26262 also defines testing requirements for each ASIL level, thus governing the entire process of development. Another method is called the failure mode and effect analysis, also known as FMEA, and this is one of the methods which is widely used in safety critical systems development and can also play a very important role for achieving the ISO 26262 compliance. And FMEA lets you identify potential failure modes or also risks and determine their probability, their controllability, and also the severity values. And based on these, it helps you to prioritize and also to prioritize your failure modes. And what's more, after determining the mitigation actions to take, codeBeamer's dedicated FMEA template lets you derive these actions as, for example, requirements or tests, just to ensure the complete traceability all the way down to testing as well. And as a consequence, FMEA can be used as, for example, a guideline of all the risk mitigation actions helping you to achieve the desired ASIL levels. And to learn more about the risk management and automotive development, we already had a webinar. And just feel free to watch our 34-minute webinar recording about risk management and automotive development on our website. There's another method which is pretty important to measure the automotive software testing, and this focus more on the development process and also the safety and reliability of the end product. So basically the term quality assurance ideally incorporates risk management also, adequate process quality, and testing measures. And with the level of the complexity involved in the development of software, which is used in the modern vehicles, the software quality assurance and testing is a very complex task. And what's more, not only do developers have to implement adequate quality assurance processes and also ensure that the products have been thoroughly tested, they also need to document everything. And also these efforts have to be documented to approve the compliance with these relevant industry regulations. And to achieve the compliance with the relevant standards and also regulations, to ensure the complete traceability and transparency of the development process, everything, all these components has to be ensured. And developers of automotive software have also make sure that all the links are established between all the work items and all the dependencies are managed. And this is where we are coming, or this is our mission, for example, how codeBeamer can provide the transparency, the traceability, and how you can adequate all the links established between all the work items. So pretty much using the right solution not only can reduce costs, it also decreases the risk of anything which can go wrong. So before we jump into our live demonstration, I would like to ask you a few simple questions. So the first one is, what software methodology are you using right now? Are you working with Agile, Scrum, Waterfall, or V-Model, or are you currently working with hybrid? So please take around just 20 or 30 seconds to answer each question. Thank you very much. So I can see most of you are working with Waterfall or V-Model. Thank you very much for your answers. The next question is, which tools are you using currently? Are you using MS Office to manage all your risk requirements and tests? Or are you using IBM, Jira, HP, or are you using other tools? So thank you very much for your answers again. The next question is, are you searching for a tool to manage your requirements, or are you using, are you searching for a testing tool, for a whole application lifecycle management tool, or are you just searching for a tool to manage agile projects, or are you interested in managing, say, the scaled agile framework? So thank you very much. So we will now show you a live demonstration how codeBeamer supports automotive development processes in many ways. So as of now, I just jumped into my Chrome. So you can see that codeBeamer is a 100% based browser system. So you can use codeBeamer in any kind of with any standard browser, such as the Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer. And as you can see here, we are in the so-called project browser, where you can store and also manage all your projects. So let me just jump here, where you can see that we have also an integrated wiki and document section, where you can store all the information or just use the wiki for collaboration and as a knowledge base. So the main part of codeBeamer are the so-called trackers. So trackers are basically just acting like folders. For one hand, the work items, and in the work items you can define different types, such as the requirements, such as architecture, system requirements, software requirements, and you can also define risks. So work items are basically these items where you do your daily work. And on the right hand side you can see the config items, and the config item doesn't change very often. So you need the config items to manage your work items, such as you can assign your requirements, your architecture, your risk to a specific release, and you can continuously test all your work items. So you can test or generate links from your requirements, architecture, risks to your test cases, and also define a test configuration where you can run your test cases or your test set. So basically test sets are when you combine many test cases into one set, and then you can run a test set with many test cases. So let me just jump into our system requirement. You can see how this looks like. So we are now in the so-called documents view. This is a view where you can work in a documents-like view. So for example, you can see we set up different system requirements, such as the front light lamp and the lighting system of a motor vehicle. And you can also see that we have the tree structure here, so you can expand this view. And for example, you can either add a new requirement just by clicking on the plus symbol. So for example, I'm just adding a lighting system of motor system, and you can see we just added this requirement. What's more, we also have an import functionality. So if you're managing all your requirements in, for example, Word, Excel, MS Project, we support all these import files. So you can easily just attach a file and choose the right file to import. Another thing is, as I mentioned before, in the documents view, you can directly edit on your requirements. So we just double click onto this work item, and here, for example, you can just add a description for your requirement. And once you save this up, you can see that the changes has been updated to this requirement as well. So let's assume we just identified a risk for a system requirement. We also have a tracker called risk. I'm just going to that tracker. And as you can see, also for risk, we can we have this tree structure. And yeah, let's just define a new risk, and let's call it, for example, we just saw a new risk for the light bulb, which is damaged. So directly in here, you can also change the hierarchy. So for example, you can see that we already identified one risk. So this is another risk called light bulb is missing. So I would just drag this risk into the right hierarchy. So this is also a way how you can also change the chronological order of your requirements, of the risks. So once I jump into the detailed view, you can see that the risks are having a predefined or by default predefined fields like the hazard. You can also add a triggering event, the harm, likelihood, and severity. But all these fields we provide in codeBeamer, these are fully customizable. So if you need another or additional fields, you can just set them up according to your needs and also according to your processes. And you can also see that we provide different statuses. So codeBeamer has a very powerful workflow engine, not only for risks, but also for requirements, for a task, for your architecture, and the workflow behind all the trackers is also fully customizable. So you can see, for example, we can directly change the status from new here to verify or to useless. So let's edit this requirement. And for example, let's add a hazard and call it front light lamp is dysfunctional. Save this up. And also we need to add a triggering event like human mistake and unfinished replacement. And also I could add a harm. So for example, there is no controls currently. So the operator or the user will detect that the front light lamp is not functioning. Afterwards, I can just add a new likelihood. So let's define it as 2 and 4D. But before I'm going to save this up, I just want to show you our so-called traceability matrix or the our risk management diagram. So as of now, you can see that we just have these two risks identified in this section and also one risk in another section. So let me just save this up. And what I did now is just creating a risk. So the next step would be that we have to set up the connection from system requirements to risks. And therefore, I can just go into a system requirement, go to the right requirement, and you can see here for each work item we have properties as well. And these are other fields, as I mentioned before, as all the property fields are highly customizable. And here you can see we have a so-called risk field. And once I open this up, extend this view again, you can see that now I can choose the light bulb is damaged. So this is a risk. And once I set this risk to that requirement, I'm just going to the detailed view of my requirement. You can see that this lightning system motor vehicle requirement is now connected to that proper risk. So in here, I can also directly jump into that specific risk. The next thing is that we have to apply or to manage the action. So we can just change the status from my risk directly here. So let's verify your risk. So you can see now your risk is verified. And now let's plan a reduction. So as we plan a reduction, now we can also add the planned risk mitigation and also the likelihood after the mitigation. So let's edit this one. And also, for example, plan the action. Save this up. And also add a likelihood after the mitigation and also the severity after mitigation. And you can see, for example, once you type in the likelihood and severity, codeBeamer automatically calculates the risks from your input. So you can see the likelihood and severity for before mitigation is 80 and now should be 20. So let's save this up so you can see the risk after mitigation is 20. So let's go back to the traceability or the risk matrix diagram and refresh the page. I'm scrolling down. You can see that now we have an additional field. So according to your inputs to the likelihood and also severity, you can see that the risk has been put here accordingly. And you can also see where the risk is coming from. So I can see the risk-related requirements, and I could also directly jump into that requirements. Or we also show the other way around. So for example, you can see also the requirements related risk. So this is one way how you can manage your risks. Another thing is, as I mentioned before, we have an FMEA template. So basically in the FMEA template you can also set up all the possible failure modes, and the failure modes will also appear in our risk matrix diagram before mitigation and also after mitigation. And once I jump into our failure modes, you can, for example, see that we have the vehicle electrical system with different failure modes, such as wiring. So the wiring can be missing or corroded or has a short circuit. So this is also how we can provide failure modes and also risk in codeBeamer. But if you would like to have more information, we already had a webinar on this, and I would like or suggest to watch our recording. So let me just go back into our project. codeBeamer, as I mentioned before, has a very powerful workflow engine, and the workflow can be customized to help the process to enforce, and also we have the so-called guards. So once I go to the customization of my trackers, you can see, for example, that these are the fields. So I can just go down and add additional fields, such as a custom field, and you can see we provide different types. So this is fully customizable. And you can also set up different permissions, like who has a permission really to edit on which fields in which status. So you can pretty much also define the permission based on statuses. So this tab is called State Transitions, and you can see here that we have a pre-configured workflow. Like if you set up a new requirement, it is in the status new. And then once you change the status new into accepted, you can see that there's a guard. So you have to, this is pretty much a condition that first has to yield true in order to go from one state to another state. And you can see that here we have to provide the user signature. And once I click into that one, you can see how this is set up. So let's try this one. So I'm just going to change the status from one customer requirement from new to accepted and see what happens. So we have, for example, this requirement called front light lamp. And now I just want to change the status. So you can see here in documents view, we can directly change the status here as well. So as we have now the red symbol visualizes the status new, I can directly go to accept. And you can see once I save this up, you can see that the signature is required. So this is a mandatory field and I cannot edit this. So as of now, it is configured that the assign to has to assign this. So I will assign this requirement to myself. And then let's try it again. Go to accept. And now you can see that now I can edit the signature field. And let's type in a wrong password. Save this up. And you can see the signature is invalid. So as of now, I will just add my real signature. Save this. Sorry, typo. I will just shut this down, refresh the page. And you can see the color has changed from red to green. So I just typed in my real signature and codeBeamer knows that my digital or electric signature is valid. So from here, you can, for example, derive directly test cases. So I just clicked onto that item where you're able to generate test cases directly from here. You can either generate test case recursively or just for these nodes. So meaning recursively means that if you have requirements and also children requirements, then you will also generate test cases for all the children requirements as well. So let's generate these ones recursively. And we have an integrated tracker, or we have a tracker called test cases, where you can manage all your test cases. And you can see we just generated these test front light lamp, and also including the children. Once I go into the detailed view, expand the tree, you can see that there's a connection from a customer requirement to test case. So you have the full traceability on that way. Another thing is that, for example, you can also manually add a test case, and let's call it, for example, a brake test, depends on. And now I'm just adding some parameters. So codeBeamer is also able, you can also put in some parameters. So for example, the brake test should depend on speed and also, for example, on the weight. And I just want to show you how it looks like. So we are managing the parameters either in Excel, so you can just upload your Excel file with your parameters in Excel, or you can use our integrated wiki and our markups. So as of now, I just added a new test case. And once I go into that test case, you can see that you can specify your test case. You can assign it to a member, and you can add a pre-action and also a post-action. So let's edit this test case. You can see the so-called verifies field. So once you check this field, you can select a system requirement or a software requirement. So this is the way how you can set up the connection on the other hand. So let's take this system requirement and set. And the next step would be that in this view, you can, for example, manage your test parameters. So let's just obtain that. And you can either use parameters in Wiki, or you can just upload it into Excel. And for this webinar, I just uploaded this Excel file. So let's choose this one. And directly in this view, you have the so-called test case library. So in the test case library, you are able to reuse the test steps either from this project. So these are test cases from this project. Or you can also reuse test steps from another project. So you can pretty much do knowledge management. So let's go into the project test labs demo project. And let's say we are reusing the test steps from our brake pads material from this project. And just by drag and dropping, I can reuse these test steps. And you can see here, we just copied them. Or you can manually add a new test step. So for example, brake with premic brake pads. So this should be the action. And directly here, for example, you can also use pictures or attach pictures. Sorry, let me just scroll down again. So here we are now. We can just by drag and dropping use the pictures as well. And also let's attach another one here. And maybe we need also a description like the expected result should be that the brake pad works fine and the car stops. So let us just save this test case. And you can see this test case has two test steps. We just added the picture, and this test case also has parameters. So from here, you need to accept your test case first. So you need to verify that the test case is okay. And the next step would be that you can directly generate a new test run from here. And also, you can directly choose the release. So for example, if you have milestone 1, milestone 2, you can select the right release to test your test case. And also you can set up, you can set up the test configuration. So pretty much this is the environment where you can set up or run your test case. So for example, you can run it on a dry road. You can also, if you are testing software, you can also use the software environment. Or you can choose multiple test configurations. And these configurations can be customized as well. So let's just choose the dry road for our test run and save this up. And now just run our test case. You can see that this is the first test case with the first parameter, like speed is 50 and also the weight is 1.2 tons. And here you can just put in the actual result like failed. So once a step failed, you can click on fail step and let's say pass step. And as one test step failed, you can directly report a bug. And in the next step, you can just choose the project and also the right tracker to submit this bug. And once you're submitting this bug, you have all relevant information directly from codeBeamer. So for example, the milestone where this bug has been found, or you can also see in which configuration, in which release, or which test step has failed. And also the parameter. You can see on which parameter the test steps failed. So once I save this up, the second parameter comes into place. So we are seeing speed 100 km per hour and also the weight. So let's pass all these steps. Save this one. And also the third parameter is coming into place. So let's also pass the step. And now you can see the actual result of your test run. So you can see, for example, on one hand, the progress. 100% are completed. The red highlighted lines means that, for example, 33% or one test case has failed, which means that the actual result of your complete test run has failed as well. You can see down here which test case has been run, and also that directly here we have a bug reported, and I can directly jump into that bug. So pretty much this was the test run for test cases. Another thing is that you can test multiple test cases. So therefore you use the so-called test set. And let's call it just test set number 1. And once I scroll down, you can also use test parameters here. And the same thing with test steps. You can reuse test cases. So you can see here all the test cases in this project. And I can just drag and drop this test case down here. And another thing is also in this view, I'm able to reuse test cases which I defined in another project called Test Labs Library demo project. You can see as of now we are in the automotive development project. So for example, just by drag and dropping, I'm able to, sorry, I don't have permission for that. Let's take this one. You can see that we also reused these test cases. So let's run the test set. And basically, so this is mandatory field. So basically, the test run is the same like for test cases. Another thing is in our so-called coverage browser, then the coverage browser provides a convenient and also efficient overview of all your testing progresses. So for example, you can see on the right-hand side all the requirements in your project. And also you can see which the actual coverage of all your requirements. So for example, you can see how many requirements has been covered with test cases so far and what's actual the coverage analysis. So for example, we have this transmission and I can see that the coverage is for this requirement is actually incomplete, and I can see this has been covered with 6 test cases. One has been run successfully, the another one has been blocked, and 4 hasn't run yet. this red highlighted suggests or visualizes that one test case has failed. Also, directly in this view, I can change the tracker to show the coverage. And also I can filter on specific releases or milestones. And also I can choose the right configuration to filter on my requirements and the test coverage. And also, for example, let's show all the requirements that hasn't been covered with test cases so far. So pretty much this is a very nice overview to see the progress of all your requirements. Another thing is a very nice way really to track all the dependencies is our so-called traceability browser. So in here you can just track one requirement and all its dependencies to another requirement, and this for multiple levels. So for example, let's just trace the dependencies for customer requirement to system requirement, and you can see here we have some dependencies. And I can, for example, go down to software requirement. Let me just zoom out a little bit. And I can really go down to test cases, go down to source code as well. So pretty much you can have full traceability. And for example, if you don't want to see the test cases, let's delete test cases, delete software requirements, and just show the dependencies from system requirements, for example, to risk. So this is how it looks like. So now I can see, for example, that this power supply has 2 system requirements, 2 related, and this power supply has 3 risk. So pretty much this is a very nice overview that you can also export to Office, either on Excel or in Word. So once I export it to Excel and I open the file, you can see that all the information and the dependency is being imported as well. So for example, you can see the work items, also the link. So you can see the status and also what kind of dependencies I have for each work item. And as after your import, you can also directly jump into the specific link. So there's a hyperlink. So if you want to check and analyze your work item, you can do that. Another thing is that we also archive, and there's a history for each of your work item. So let's say we have requirements and the requirements changes, for example. Let's go here. So let's change the budget. Let me zoom in a little bit. So let me just change the budget from 7,000 to 5,000 and save this up. I'm going to the detailed view of my work item, and you can see there's a history section. And I can see, oh, I just changed the budget from 7,000 to 5,000. So pretty much you can see who has done which change on what time. And also if you edit any kind of description, then it is highlighted in green, and also you can see the risk related. Another thing, or a very useful feature that we also provide are baselinings. So baselinings are very useful if you have to be compliant or for audit purposes. So before this webinar, I just draw a baseline or a version number 1, and now I can draw version number 2. Let's call it baseline number 2, and I can also verify it with my electronic signature. But again, typo. Once I click on OK, I just created a baseline. So baseline is basically a snapshot over your whole project. So all the configuration, all the work items, description, documents, wikis, source code, and settings are being stored or versioned within this baseline. So as of now, I am able to select the baselines which I want to compare. So let's choose baseline number 1 and baseline number 2, and I can directly compare those. So in this statistics, you can see that we have made changes on work item level. We also added 3 documents and we removed 1, and also on project level. And as I mentioned before, we can also see the changes on source code. So now I can go into the detailed view. So for example, I can also show the diff. So for example, I can see here various test cases has been modified, and once I click on that, I can also see who has changed my test cases. So all your information are being stored in the baseline without really to integrate various standalone tools, and just to be compliant and facilitating the regulatory compliance. So pretty much this was the live demonstration. Thank you very much for your attention today. Before we jump off into the Q&A session, I would like to ask you a last question. This would be, would you like to receive more information about codeBeamer? So thank you very much for your answers. So let's see if we have some questions. So there's a question, but I'm afraid I don't get this question. I think I will follow up with you afterwards, and we can clarify this afterwards. I'm just trying to answer this question. So this is a question if it is a module that aligns codeBeamer with the ISO standards. So basically, it's the process we provide, and also the safety regulatory feature that make this compliant. But as I mentioned before, if this is not satisfied enough, we can follow up with you. So is there another question? So I will just wait a few seconds or wait a few minutes for our next question. All right, by the way, we would like to also invite you to our next webinar titled Flexible Workflow Configuration with codeBeamer on the 29th July 2015 at 4 p.m. So as you can see, we don't have any questions right now. So I would like to thank you for your attention today, and maybe see you next time.